You think one dinner can't change your life? It can. It did. And I'm here to tell you exactly how it happened. Family dinners are supposed to be about warmth, about laughter, about that smell of roasted turkey and the sound of too many voices talking over each other. But for me, going back home for Thanksgiving was never that simple. For years, it was a gamble. Would it be calm this time? Or would it spiral into another night I'd want to erase from memory? Still, last year I booked a ticket back to San Diego. I told myself, maybe it'll be different this time. My mom had just gone through surgery. People change after things like that, right? They soften. They see life differently. At least, that's what I let myself believe. On the flight, I stared at the seat in front of me and kept repeating the same mantra. This is just dinner. You can do this. But underneath, I felt that knot in my chest. You know the one. The knot that shows up when you're heading straight into a place that has always hurt you. I didn't walk into this trip unprepared. My therapist and I had mapped out scenarios. What if she criticizes me? What if she compares me again? What if she pushes the one button she knows will undo me? I practiced responses. I practiced breathing. I even practiced silence. And because I know myself, because I know how quickly I can crumble in that house, I rented an Airbnb just a few blocks away, my safe zone, my escape hatch. Do you ever do that? Plan for the worst when everyone else just plans for pie and stuffing? That's what it feels like when your family home isn't safe ground, when you're walking into it like a soldier crossing enemy lines. The first sight of San Diego hit me with nostalgia. Palm trees swaying, ocean air carrying that salty tang. It's supposed to feel like home. But when I pulled up to my parents' house, the feeling shifted. The driveway looked the same, but it felt like a stage where I had been cast in a role I never auditioned for. The disappointment, the not enough. And yet, when my mom opened the door, her smile was wide, too wide. Her arms wrapped around me, and for a second, just a second, I let myself hope. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe we could press reset. She told me she was glad I came. I wanted so badly to believe her. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and roasted vegetables. My dad sat in his recliner, pretending the football game was more important than my arrival. Classic. My cousins were already in the kitchen, stealing bites and laughing. To anyone else, it looked perfect. A Norman Rockwell painting come to life. But here's the thing. Perfection is fragile. It's glass thin. And when you've lived through years of cracks, you start noticing where the fractures are. I slipped into the guest room to drop off my bag. I glanced at myself in the mirror. I whispered, "You're not that little girl anymore. You can handle this." But the truth? That little girl was still there, tugging at my sleeve, terrified of what was coming. Dinner was set for 7. The long table stretched out like a runway, plates gleaming under the chandelier. And as I stood there taking it all in, I thought, maybe I'm being dramatic. Maybe tonight really will be okay. Then, out of nowhere, that thought stabbed me with another. But what if it's not? What if tonight is the night you finally break? You see, when you grow up being told you're not enough, every reunion is a gamble. And this Thanksgiving, I was about to roll the dice again. So stay with me. Because what happened at that table, what came out of my mother's mouth, would echo in my head long after the plates were cleared. If you've ever felt invisible, you'll understand what I'm about to say. Because walking into that house wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It was about walking straight into years of echoes, years of being told I wasn't enough. Every corner of that place carried memories like dust you can't sweep away. When I was little, it started small. At least small in the way bruises sometimes look small before they ache for days. My mom loved comparisons. She had a gift for turning someone else's achievement into my personal failure. If the neighbor's daughter got straight A's, it meant, "Why can't you?" If my cousin won a swim meet, it meant, if only you tried harder. I can still hear her voice sharp, clipped, always pointing outward, never inward. And my dad? He was there, physically, but silence was his language. He'd sit in his recliner, newspaper open, letting the words float above him like a shield. He never raised his voice at me, but he never raised it for me either. Do you know what that feels like? To have someone who should protect you just not? I learned early that home wasn't safe. It was a stage where I was cast as the disappointing daughter. I wore that costume so long, it started to feel like skin. I remember one afternoon, I must have been 10, coming home with a drawing I was proud of. I had spent hours coloring it. My teacher even put a gold star in the corner. My mom glanced at it, then said, "You should have added more detail to the trees. Look at how other kids draw." That star might as well have turned to ash in my hands. And it didn't stop there. Middle school, high school, college. Each milestone was another chance for her to highlight what I lacked. She had a line she loved. "You're not living up to your potential." At first, I thought potential was something I could reach if I just tried harder. Later, I realized it was just her way of moving the goalpost. No matter what I did, I would never get there. The silence from my dad cut just as deep. Sometimes silence screams louder than words. I would look at him, begging with my eyes for him to say something, anything, to shield me. But he would just sip his coffee, eyes fixed on the sports page. Do you know how lonely that is? To be in a room full of family and feel like no one sees you? And here's the cruel part. You start believing it, that you are invisible, that your worth is measured only by how close you get to someone else's impossible standards. If you've ever felt like you had to earn love, like it wasn't just given to you, then you know the weight I carried. It wasn't just disappointment. It was this constant low hum of never enough, not pretty enough, not smart enough, not successful enough, just not. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, promising myself, one day, I'll prove her wrong. But morning came, and the weight was still there, pressing down, reminding me that proving her wrong might never be possible. And yet kids are resilient. We adapt. My adaptation was perfectionism. If I could get straight A's, maybe she'd smile. If I could get into a good college, maybe she'd brag about me. And sometimes she did. But even then, it was wrapped in a comparison. Rachel did well, but did you hear about Claire's daughter? I carried that hunger for approval into adulthood. Every job interview, every relationship, every new city, I was still chasing that nod from my mom, and the silence from my dad only reinforced it. When no one steps in to say, "Enough, stop hurting her," you start to think maybe you deserve it. So when I tell you that one dinner can change everything, it's not because that dinner existed in isolation. It's because that dinner sat on top of decades of weight, years of invisible scars. Think about your own life. Have you ever carried a secret bruise? One no one could see, but it colored everything? That was my childhood. A collection of secret bruises. By the time I walked into that Thanksgiving, I wasn't just a 35-year-old woman coming home. I was also that little girl with the gold star drawing, still waiting for someone to say, "That's beautiful. I'm proud of you." And I know some of you are nodding right now because you've been there too. You've been the kid in the corner, watching someone else get celebrated while you shrink into yourself. That's the weight I carried into that dinner. And trust me, when the glass was raised, when the words came out of my mother's mouth later that night, it didn't just sting in the moment. It ripped open every scar that had been there since childhood. Dinner started the way dinners always do. Small talk, clinking silverware, the hum of voices filling the room. For a moment, I let myself relax. The table looked beautiful. Candles flickered against the polished glasses. The turkey sat in the center, golden brown, like a magazine cover. My cousins were laughing about something at the far end. My aunt passed mashed potatoes to my dad, who nodded, eyes still glued to the football score on his phone. For a second I thought, maybe tonight will be okay. But with my family, peace is never free. It always comes with an expiration date. The first jab came fast. My mom, Monica, asked me about work. Simple question, right? I started to answer, explaining the project I was proud of. She tilted her head, gave that smile I know too well, and said, "Oh, still doing that? Claire's daughter just got promoted to regional manager. Did you hear?" The table chuckled politely. I felt my cheeks burn. I tried to swallow it. I've had years of practice. Smile, nod, keep breathing. But the thing about little cuts, they pile up. Minutes later, she asked about my apartment. I mentioned fixing a leaky sink myself. Her laugh rang out. "Rachel, you? Fixing something? That must have been a sight." More chuckles. More heat in my chest. Have you ever been in a room where everyone's laughing, but you're the punchline? That's what it felt like. Every word she spoke chipped away at me, and everyone else just let it happen. I kept glancing at my dad, hoping just one word, just one. Enough. But he sat silent, spooning green beans onto his plate, as if silence could erase the humiliation. The mood in the room shifted. The laughter wasn't light anymore. It was tight, nervous, like people sensed where this was heading but were too polite to stop it. My stomach twisted. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear, but I stayed, because leaving would have felt like admitting defeat. And then it happened. The moment that still echoes in my ears. We were halfway through the meal when my mom lifted her glass. Everyone followed, expecting the usual toast about gratitude, family, or health. She cleared her throat, eyes scanning the table. The room went still, and then she said it. My biggest mistake was, Rachel, silence. Not a gasp, not a whisper. Just silence so heavy it pressed against my skin, I froze. Fork halfway to my mouth. My heart slammed in my chest like it was trying to break free. Did she really just say that? My eyes darted around the table. My cousins stared down at their plates. My aunt shifted uncomfortably. My dad? Still silent. Have you ever had a moment where the air gets sucked out of the room? Where time slows and all you can hear is the pounding in your ears? That's what it felt like. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table, to demand someone stand up for me, but no one moved, no one spoke. The humiliation wasn't private anymore. It was public, announced under candlelight, carved into memory like stone. And here's the part that cut deepest. It wasn't shock on their faces, it was resignation. Like this was just another chapter in a story they'd all read before. My mom set her glass down, smiling faintly, satisfied with the chaos she'd just unleashed. The clink of glass on wood was louder than the laughter had been. I sat there, feeling stripped bare. 35 years of not being enough, condensed into one sentence. A sentence that would echo long after the plates were cleared. You think your family dinner is tough? Imagine your own mother calling you her biggest mistake. Stay with me, because what I did next would change everything. I don't remember standing up. 1 second, I was frozen in that chair, fork heavy in my hand, and the next, I was on my feet. My chair scraped against the hardwood, loud and sharp, like a crack splitting through the silence. All eyes turned toward me. My heart was pounding, but my voice, finally, found its way out. No more. It wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. It sliced through the tension like glass breaking. My mom blinked, eyebrows arched, as if she hadn't expected a response. My dad shifted, his fork hovering midair. But I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. I pushed my napkin onto the table and said, "You don't get to talk about me like that anymore. Not tonight, not ever." It was the first time I had drawn a line. After 35 years of being the family's favorite punching bag, I finally said no. And you know what? My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I grabbed my coat from the back of the chair. My cousins stared, mouths slightly open, but no one moved to stop me. No one said, "Stay," not even my dad. And that silence, for once, felt like freedom. When I walked out of that house, the cold San Diego night wrapped around me like a shock. The air smelled of salt from the ocean. My feet carried me fast, almost running. I didn't even know where I was going, just away. Away from the walls that had shrunk me my entire life. Have you ever walked out of a place that held you hostage for years? The air tastes different. Every breath feels earned. That night, the world felt wider than it had in decades. I ended up at my Airbnb, a small cottage with creaky floors and mismatched lamps. I collapsed onto the bed, still in my dress, still in my coat. I expected to feel broken, gutted, but instead I felt something I hadn't in years. Relief. The kind that starts in your chest and spreads outward, as if your body finally believes you're safe. In the days that followed, I leaned hard on friends. They came over with takeout, with wine, with blankets. They didn't ask me to explain. They didn't tell me to forgive. They just sat with me, laughed with me, reminded me what belonging feels like when it isn't conditional. And then Thanksgiving came around again, 1 year later. I wasn't at that long dining table, under the watchful eye of a mother who thought I was her mistake. I was in a living room lit by string lights, surrounded by people who chose me. We crowded onto couches, balancing paper plates piled with food, laughing so hard we spilled drinks on the carpet. At one point, my friend Lena raised her glass and said, "To Rachel, for reminding us you can build your own family." I laughed, tears in my eyes, and for once, the toast wasn't a dagger. It was a gift. That night, I realized something. Family isn't just blood. Family is the people who look at you and see you, really see you, and still stay. And maybe you're watching this thinking, could I do that? Could I walk away? Let me tell you this. Walking away isn't betrayal. Sometimes it's the only way to save yourself. Stay with me, because what came next proved that even freedom has consequences I never could have imagined. I thought walking away had been the end. But endings are never that clean, are they? A year after that dinner, when I had finally built a fragile sense of peace, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Texts, calls, notifications stacked one after another. At first, I thought something had happened to a friend. Then I opened one of the links. There it was. A shaky, grainy video of me standing up from the table that night. My voice saying, "No more." My mom's words clear as day. My biggest mistake was Rachel. Someone had recorded it. Someone had posted it. And overnight, my most private humiliation became public property. Have you ever felt your stomach drop so hard you thought you might never get air again? That's what it felt like. Watching strangers dissect my pain in real time. Reading captions like, "Toxic mom calls daughter her biggest mistake at Thanksgiving dinner." Seeing my name trend on platforms I didn't even use. At first I couldn't move. I sat on the floor, phone in hand, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear. And then came the comments. Thousands of them. Some said, "We stand with you." Others wrote, "She probably deserved it." People who knew nothing about me, nothing about the decades behind that one sentence, decided they were experts on my life. And my mom? Oh, she didn't stay silent. Of course not. Within days, she was giving interviews, sitting on a local news couch, saying how ungrateful I was. She painted herself as the victim. "I was joking," she told one reporter. And Rachel has always been dramatic. Do you know what it's like to watch the very person who broke you twist the knife deeper, this time for an audience of millions? It's one thing to survive cruelty behind closed doors. It's another to see it broadcast, replayed, memed. Friends sent me screenshots of headlines. Family Feud goes viral. Daughter storms out. Even tabloids picked it up, and then came the divide. Half the internet rallied around me, sharing their own stories of being belittled by parents. The other half mocked me, called me weak, said I should have kept family matters private. And here's the truth. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to delete every account, throw my phone in the ocean, crawl back under a blanket and never come out. Because it's not just the humiliation, it's the exposure. The feeling that your skin has been peeled back and your worst wound is now content. But then, in the quiet, something else surfaced. Rage. Not the messy, uncontrolled kind. The focused kind. The kind that says, this is my life, and I refuse to let strangers write my story for me. Still, the noise was deafening. Every time I opened an app, there I was, frozen in a loop, standing up from that chair. Every time I walked into a store, I felt eyes on me, wondering if I was that girl from the video. Have you ever been forced to relive the worst night of your life because the world won't let you forget? That's what this was. Over and over, the wound ripped open again. And here's the part no one tells you. Going viral doesn't just happen to influencers or celebrities. It can happen to you, to me, to anyone unlucky enough to be caught at the wrong moment. And once it's out there, you don't get to pull it back. I knew I couldn't control the internet, but I also knew I had a choice. Let my mother define the story, or take it back myself. Stay, because what I did next flipped everything on its head. And it's the reason I'm here telling you this today. I had a choice. Either vanish and let my mother's version of me become permanent, or step forward and speak for myself. Hiding sounded safer, but silence had already cost me too much. Silence had kept me small at that dinner table for decades. So I opened my laptop, turned on the little camera, and hit record. I didn't script it. I couldn't. It had to be raw, unpolished, like the diary I never let anyone read. I stared at the lens, my hands shaking, and I just said the truth. This is me. The girl you've seen in that video. The daughter who walked away from her mother. I need you to hear what you didn't see that night. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. I painted the picture. The years of biting my tongue, the countless dinners where the knife wasn't in the turkey, it was in her words. I spoke about the ache of never being enough, no matter what I did. And then I said the line that had been buried inside me all my life. Setting boundaries is not betrayal. I repeated it, slowly, clearly, letting it land. Because that's what no one teaches you when you grow up in a house like mine. That protecting yourself doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you human. Have you ever watched yourself tell the truth and felt the weight slide off your chest? That's what happened as the words poured out. For the first time, I wasn't talking to her or to my family. I was talking to me. And maybe, I hoped, to someone out there who needed to hear it too. I uploaded the video at 2 a.m. I thought no one would notice. By morning, my phone was vibrating across the table. Notifications stacking, shares climbing, messages flooding in. At first, fear spiked. What if people mocked me again? What if they called me dramatic, weak, crazy? But the comments, oh God, the comments were different this time. I thought I was the only one. My mom used to call me her mistake too. Thank you. You put into words what I never could. One by one, strangers turned into mirrors, reflecting back my pain, my courage, my story. People stitched my video, adding their own stories. The hashtag spread. Suddenly, it wasn't just my narrative, it was ours. And yes, there were trolls. There always are. But their words couldn't stick the same way. Because for every sneer, there were 100 voices saying, "We see you, we believe you." I sat there, tears sliding down my face, not from shame this time, but from release. Years of carrying that weight, of feeling invisible, cracked open, The internet can destroy you, but sometimes it can also save you. I learned that speaking up doesn't guarantee applause. It guarantees clarity. And clarity is freedom. My mother could say whatever she wanted to the press, but she could never erase the diary I made public. That video wasn't just me owning the narrative. It was me reclaiming myself. And if you've ever been silenced, if you've ever been told your story doesn't matter, hear me. You don't need their permission to speak. Stay. Because what happened after changed not just my life, but the way I see family forever. When I look back now, it's strange to think that one dinner, one night, one raised glass could lead me here. But that's how life works sometimes. One fracture reveals the fault lines that have been there all along. After my video went viral, people kept asking me, "Do you regret it? Do you regret putting it all out there?" And honestly, no. Because what I lost was never really mine to begin with. And what I found, what I built after, that is mine. I remember sitting at my friend Jasmine's house that first Thanksgiving after everything blew up. Her kitchen smelled like cinnamon and butter. There was laughter spilling in from the living room where her kids were fighting over a board game. I sat on the floor, leaning against the couch, played on my lap, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, safe, wanted, seen. You ever realize family isn't about blood? It's about who shows up when you're raw and messy and maybe a little broken. Who looks at you and says, "Stay, you belong here." That's what I had now. It didn't happen overnight. Healing never does. There were mornings when I woke up shaking, when the weight of my mother's words still pressed down on my chest. But there was also the text that would come in from an old high school friend. "Saw your video, been there too." There were DMs from strangers in London, Toronto, Dallas saying, "You gave me the courage to finally tell my truth." And in those voices, I heard my own echo. I wasn't invisible anymore. My mother never called, not once. And maybe she never will. That used to keep me up at night. Now it doesn't. Because I understand something I didn't before. Peace doesn't come from fixing people who refuse to see you. Peace comes from choosing where you place your love, your time, your trust. I chose to place mine where it grows. And here's what I want you to take from my story. You can choose family. You can choose peace. You don't have to earn your worth by shrinking, by bending, by swallowing pain just to be invited to the table. You can build your own table. You can invite the ones who love you without conditions. Maybe that's what freedom really is. Not cutting ties in anger, but planting new ones in love. If you've been through this, if you've ever walked out of a room where you were supposed to belong but didn't, know that you're not alone. Tell me your story. Because when we share, we stitch the invisible threads that remind us belonging isn't a gift someone else hands you. It's something you claim for yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that's the family you were meant to find all along. You know that moment when you think you finally closed a chapter? You exhale. You move on. You even start building something new. And then, out of nowhere, the past knocks. That's what happened to me. I thought the door was shut. I thought I was safe. But the email proved otherwise. It arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. I remember because I was sitting by the window sipping coffee, listening to the quiet drip of water against the glass. My inbox pinged, and there it was. The sender's name almost made me drop the mug, my brother. The same brother who had stayed silent that night at dinner. The one who watched but said nothing as our mother raised her glass and shattered me with 6 words. My biggest mistake was Rachel. He hadn't written to me in years. No birthdays, no holidays, just silence, until now. The subject line was simple. You should know. My hand shook as I clicked it open. Inside, a few short sentences. Mom is sick, it's serious. You should come before it's too late. My heart twisted. Sick? Serious? I read it again, as if the words might change. They didn't. They sat there cold, final, daring me to respond. And just like that, the floodgates opened. Every memory I thought I'd locked away came rushing back. The childhood birthdays where she compared me to cousins, the afternoons I begged for attention and got criticism instead, the night she humiliated me in front of strangers. But alongside the pain, another voice whispered, "What if this is the last chance? What if you regret not going? Do you know that guilt can creep in even after years of therapy? Even after you've built boundaries so strong, you swore nothing could break them. It seeps through the cracks. That email was proof. I didn't reply right away. I couldn't. Instead, I sat there staring at the screen, trying to breathe. My therapist's words echoed in my head. You don't owe anyone access to your healing. But wasn't this different? Wasn't illness supposed to soften hearts, bring people together? Or was that just a lie movies told us? That night, I journaled, the page filled with questions I couldn't answer. If I go, am I betraying myself? If I don't go, am I heartless? I scratched the word so hard the pen nearly tore the paper. Flashback, I was 11. I'd spilled juice on the carpet. My mom screamed, not just about the stain, but about how clumsy, how careless, how unworthy I was. I remember standing frozen, wishing my brother would speak up. He didn't. He just sat there, staring at his shoes. And now, years later, he was the one asking me to come back. I closed the journal and whispered to myself, how do you go back to a house that once threw you out? For days, I carried the email like a stone in my chest. I'd be laughing with friends, cooking dinner, editing a video, and suddenly my stomach would clench, reminding me. My chosen family noticed. They saw the heaviness in my eyes, the way I stared too long at nothing. One night, my best friend leaned across the couch and asked, "What's going on?" "You've been somewhere else all week." I showed her the email. She read it silently, then looked up at me with a mix of concern and caution. "Do you want to go?" she asked gently. I didn't know. That was the truth. Part of me wanted to run as far as possible, never look back. Another part ached. What if this was the moment of reconciliation I'd always dreamed of as a kid? What if there was finally a sliver of love left to claim? But the bigger fear? Walking back into that house, only to feel small again, invisible again, crushed again. I tossed and turned for nights, imagining every possible outcome, a cold reception, a last-minute apology, or maybe nothing at all. Maybe she'd still see me as her mistake. And if that was the case, could I survive hearing it again? The past has a way of clawing its way into the present. That email wasn't just news. It was a test. It forced me to ask, had I really healed, or had I just built a temporary wall? If you've ever gotten a message like that, something that reopens an old wound, you know the mix of dread and hope it brings. It's like hearing a knock on the door in the middle of the night. You want to ignore it, but you can't stop wondering who's there. By the end of the week, I still hadn't replied. But the words of that email kept echoing. Before it's too late. Too late for what? For forgiveness? For closure? Or for me to prove to myself that I could walk back in stronger than before? That's when I realized this wasn't just about my mother. It was about me, about the power I did, or didn't, have over my own story. And so, with trembling hands, I drafted a reply. I didn't send it yet, but the decision was forming. Maybe I needed to go, not for her, not even for him, but for me, to see if the walls I'd built could hold, to find out whether closure was a one-time event or a choice you have to keep making over and over again. Because sometimes the past doesn't just knock once. It keeps knocking until you decide whether to answer. Stay with me, because what happened when I finally did answer, that changed everything again. I hadn't been back in years, not since that night. Not since the glass was raised and my mother's words turned a dinner into a wound I thought would never close. And yet here I was, standing at the edge of the driveway, suitcase in hand, staring at the house that once swallowed me whole. It looked smaller than I remembered. Isn't that always the way? Childhood homes shrink when you grow. The paint on the shutters was peeling. The lawn was uneven, as if no one had cared for it in months. I told myself that was a sign of her illness, proof that maybe my brother wasn't exaggerating. But another part of me whispered, or maybe it's just always been broken, like everything else in this family. My heart pounded as I walked up the steps. The doorbell felt heavy under my finger. For a second, I thought about turning around, calling an Uber, going back to the airport, pretending this never happened. But then the door opened. It was my brother. He looked older, tired, a few gray strands in his hair. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Just silence, thick and awkward, stretching between us. Finally, he muttered, "Hey, hey," I whispered back. My voice sounded foreign, too small for the weight of the moment. He stepped aside to let me in. The smell hit me instantly. Faint lavender mixed with something sterile, like a hospital. The hallway was dim, the pictures on the walls unchanged. Family portraits where I smiled too hard, desperate to look happy. My mother in the center, perfect hair, perfect smile, hiding the imperfections no one dared to name. My brother led me into the living room. There she was, my mother, lying on the couch, blanket tucked around her shoulders. Her skin looked pale, her frame smaller than I remembered. For the first time in my life, she looked fragile. She opened her eyes, saw me, and for a second, something flickered across her face. Shock, maybe, or confusion. Then her lips curled, not into a smile, but into something I couldn't read. "Rachel," she said softly, like the name itself was an effort. I froze. All those years, I dreamed of hearing her say my name with love, with pride. And now, it just sounded tired. I sat down on the edge of a chair, my suitcase still by the door. My brother slipped away, leaving us in that suffocating silence. "You came," she whispered. "Yeah," I said. My voice cracked. "I came. There were 1,000 things I wanted to ask." "Why did you say it? Did you mean it? Do you even remember?" But the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I asked the one question that had been clawing at me since I got the email. "Are you dying?" She coughed, a weak laugh escaping her lips. "We're all dying, Rachel. Some just faster than others." My stomach twisted. "That's not an answer." Her eyes met mine. For the first time in my life, I thought I saw fear there. Real fear. "The doctors say it's serious. I don't know how much time I have. I should have felt pity or sorrow or something. But what I felt was rage, hot, sharp, rising from the pit of my stomach. Because here she was, facing the end, and still she couldn't give me clarity. Still she spoke in riddles, still she made me chase scraps of truth. "Do you regret it?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. She blinked. "Regret what?" I leaned forward, my hands shaking. That night, the toast, saying your biggest mistake was me. Her face didn't move. For a moment, I thought she might finally break, finally apologize. But instead, she closed her eyes. "You always were too sensitive. Too sensitive. 2 words. That's all she gave me. And suddenly, I was 11 again, standing in a stained carpet, being scolded for spilling juice. I was 17 again, crying in the bathroom after another comparison to a cousin who always did better. I was 25 again, humiliated in front of strangers at a dinner table. I stood up, my breath ragged. "Sensitive? That's what you think this is about?" Do you have any idea what you did to me?" Her eyes fluttered open, and for the first time, I saw tears there. Real ones. "You don't understand, Rachel. I was trying to make you stronger. Stronger." That word echoed in my skull. All the pain, all the criticism, all the silence from my father. All of it packaged as love twisted into cruelty. My chest tightened, but I didn't collapse this time, not like before. "You didn't make me stronger," I said, my voice steady, surprising even me. "I made myself stronger, in spite of you." She flinched, like the words hit harder than I intended. For a moment, I thought she'd snap back, unleash the venom I knew so well, but she didn't. She just stared at me, her lips trembling, her body sinking deeper into the couch. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Instead, I picked up my suitcase. My brother appeared in the hallway, eyes wide. "You're leaving already?" I nodded. "I came to see. Now I've seen." He reached out, as if to stop me, but let his hand fall. "She's still our mom." I paused at the door. "She's your mom," I said quietly. "She'll always be your mom." But she stopped being mine a long time ago, and with that, I stepped back into the night air. The cool breeze hit my face like a baptism. I felt raw, gutted, but also strangely free, because I had gone back. I had faced her, and I had walked away, not broken, not begging, whole. Do you know how powerful that feels? To stand where you once crumbled, and this time to walk out taller? It doesn't erase the scars, but it proves they no longer control you. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, maybe regret, maybe peace. But in that moment, as the house faded behind me, I knew one thing for certain. The silence that haunted me as a child was gone. Because I had found my own voice. And once you claim it, no one, not even your own mother, can take it back. Stay, because what came next wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I never thought I'd have. Real freedom. I thought walking out of that house would feel like an ending, but in truth, it felt more like a door cracking open. The air outside carried something my childhood never did. Space, possibility, a freedom that hummed beneath my skin. I sat in the rental car for a long time before starting the engine. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, chest rising and falling too fast. I stared at the windshield, the reflection of the house shrinking behind me. I told myself it's over, but inside I knew it wasn't. Because silence doesn't end with leaving a room, it lingers, it follows you, it wants to seep back in. And that night, when I finally drove away, I realized the silence had one last trick left. It wanted me to carry it, to stay small, to let it bury me. But I'd learned something new over the past year, something I couldn't unlearn. Silence may linger, but voices can echo louder, and I had one now. I got back to the Airbnb, opened my laptop, and stared at the blinking cursor. My brother's words echoed in my head. "She's still our mom." Maybe for him, silence worked. Maybe it was survival, but for me, it had become poison, so I started typing. I typed out what had just happened in that living room. The cough, the pale skin, the half regrets, the too sensitive. And then I typed out everything that had happened before it. Every scar, every sharp word. Every night I pressed a pillow to my face so no one would hear me cry. The words poured out, like a flood that had been dammed up for decades. I didn't stop to edit. I didn't stop to soften. I just wrote. When I finished, the clock read 3:14 a.m. My fingers ached, my eyes burned, but for the first time, I felt lighter. And then I hit upload, not to a blog, not to a diary hidden on a shelf, to YouTube. To the same platform where millions of people had already dissected that infamous dinner video, where my mother's words had become a meme, a headline, a punchline. But this time, the story was mine. The next morning, I woke up to notifications buzzing like static. My video wasn't slick, it wasn't polished. It was just me, sitting cross-legged on the bed, speaking from a raw place. My hair a mess, my voice cracking, no background music, no cuts, just truth. The comments rolled in faster than I could read them. Some said, "This is exactly what my mom did to me." Others wrote, "You're so brave for saying this out loud." And a few, of course, accused me of exaggerating, of airing family drama for attention. But here's the thing. The voices that mattered weren't the cruel ones. They were the echoes of people who had lived the same silence. People who had been told they were too sensitive. People who had been humiliated by their own blood, then told to be grateful anyway. For every one person who doubted me, 10 more said, "Thank you. I thought I was alone." And that's when it hit me. My story wasn't just mine. It was thousands of others, maybe millions. 2 weeks later, I got an email. The subject line read, "Panel invitation, healing from family trauma." At first, I laughed. Me? On a panel? I was still figuring out how to eat breakfast without spiraling, but they insisted. They said my story had resonated with people, that my voice mattered in conversations that had too often been dominated by professionals, not survivors. So I said yes. The panel was held at a university in Los Angeles. I remember sitting backstage, knees bouncing, palms sweating. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. But then I thought about the 11-year-old me who never saw anyone say out loud what she was living through. I thought about the 17-year-old me crying in the bathroom after being compared to a cousin. I thought about the 25-year-old me, frozen at a dinner table while strangers watched my own mother toast to my failure, and I walked out. The lights were blinding. The audience blurred into a sea of faces, but when I spoke, my voice didn't shake. I told the truth, the same truth I had typed out at 3 a.m. I told them that boundaries are not betrayal, that silence is not peace, that family is not ownership. When I finished, people stood, they clapped, some cried, and for once, I wasn't the one shrinking into the wallpaper. I was the one being seen. A week later, I got another email, this one from a high school teacher in Toronto. She said she'd shown my video to her class, and half the students had raised their hands to say they related. "You gave them language they didn't have before," she wrote. I cried when I read that, not because of the pain in their stories, but because I realized something powerful. Silence doesn't just disappear when you speak, it transforms. It becomes connection. And connection? That's louder than shame. But let me be honest. Not everyone was happy. My mother's friends sent me angry messages. My aunt called me ungrateful. My brother texted me late one night, "You went too far this time." And for a moment I doubted myself. Maybe they were right. Maybe I should have kept it private. Maybe speaking out was cruel. But then I remembered something. Silence was never neutral. It always protected the wrong person. And I wasn't going to carry that anymore. So I texted him back. Telling the truth isn't betrayal. Pretending it didn't happen is. He didn't reply. And that was okay. Because the echoes I was hearing now weren't from my family. They were from the world. Sometimes I still replay her words in my head. My biggest mistake was Rachel. They used to cut like glass. Now they feel different. Not healed exactly, but hollow. Because mistakes can be corrected, mistakes can teach. Mistakes don't define your worth. And if I am her mistake, then maybe that mistake has become a message. Because here's what I know now. You don't have to keep the silence that was handed to you. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit someone else's version of strength. You can take the story, twist it in your hands, and make it something new. That's what I've done. That's what I'm still doing. And if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been told you were too much or not enough, listen closely. You don't have to carry that forever. You can lay it down. You can choose your own family. You can choose your own voice. And once you do, the world will echo back.